Hi, this is my case study, Internet Use Violations for EDL 850. So starting off with this problem for this case study, a couple of things stood out to me. One of them being that students come from a very kind of prestigious part of town, more upper middle class, so affluent, well-to-do parents who own businesses, CEOs, and the like. So pretty safe part of town, just from the outer looks of it. There's a teacher at the school named Miss Tate. She's very young, unmarried. She's very strict in the sense that her course load for, I think it was zoology, botany, biology, very rigorous for students, which as it should be. But students and parents are frustrated with her practices and policies. They think that she's almost too tough, and it's putting some of them in danger of not having a perfect GPA or not becoming valedictorian because of it. So Dr. Harvey Smith is the principal at the school. He's recognized, celebrated, and he's been working with Miss Tate to kind of justify her rigorous course load and help her work on building relationships with students and maybe balancing that if at all possible. But problems continue to exist as of when this case study presented itself. So Miss Tate was taking advantage of a long weekend, went to visit her parents, and received an email containing a perceived threat about wanting her to disappear, among other offensive comments. And so naturally she panics. She calls Dr. Smith and asks him what she should do. She's so upset that she decides to stay with her parents and not return home until he can look into it a little bit more, which he promises to do. So some things that I would need to know is our capability to locate the student. So if I were an assistant principal to Dr. Smith, I'd want to know how able are we to find out who this offending student is who created this Facebook page. I want to know the intended purpose of the email or the threat. Is it really to hurt Miss Tate, or is it a prank? I want to relook at our district protocol and laws for internet use and what we do with cyberbullies, including disciplinary action for students who are cyberbullying, but also towards a teacher if that changes anything. Again, the intention, is it a prank or is it for real? And then I'd probably want to interview Miss Tate about any communication she had with her classes that may have set them off, that may have been taken the wrong way. It might interfere with her account, might make her more emotional when she's accusing students. So I want to definitely get some more information from her about the proceedings in her classes during the last week. And then I want to make sure I'm clear on the legal ramifications. If a teacher feels threatened, can she sue? What would she sue for? And same with the student if we act too quickly without due process. So the problem is several problems with this case study. One is that now, because of this, Miss Tate doesn't feel safe in her classroom after seeing those statements said about her, and I think I would probably agree with her. She actually feels safer at her parents' house. It's clear the problem also is that her students don't respect her, and they think that this is okay behavior, and they think it's funny to get at Miss Tate in this way. So jokingly or not, the comments have escalated into a threatening territory, and it needs to be dealt with swiftly. Ms. Tate believes that one particular student, William Hall, is potentially responsible. This is a problem because it can't be backed up by anything as of yet. And so we want to be careful about just randomly accusing students without any evidence. And I think that's a problem that she already has it in her mind, that she knows who the student is, whether that's true or not. She's afraid to return. So action obviously needs to take place immediately, and that is part of the problem. So if I were an assistant principal at this school to Dr. Smith, here are some strategies that I would try to implement as far as how to resolve the problem as quickly as possible. So first of all, I would encourage Ms. Tate to go back to the classroom immediately. I would not want her to spend an extended time out of school. I would not put her on administrative leave. I want her to face the issue with her class confidently and collectedly, so that some of their attitudes about her might be changing. So I'd let her know that administration will be taking action immediately. She can address the class that she thinks is doing it about the Facebook page, and it kind of opens up the door to that kind of conversation about how to act appropriately with social media. And I would probably offer for a principal, an assistant principal, or a counselor to monitor her classes so she feels safer and the kids know that there's an extra set of eyes on them if they happen to be wanting to go down this route again. So I would work to find also who the offending student is. So again, due process. I can't just assume it's going to be William. I need to take steps to try to find out who it actually is. So I'd avoid jumping to conclusions. I know that can cause some legal problems. So I'd probably interview random students in her classes about the culture of her classroom and determine climate, or if there's rumors started, if anybody knows that another student made this page, and where we can go from there. I'd contact our ID department, see if we can find the IP address for the Facebook page where it originated. And also, at least at my current school in Cherry Creek, if students are using email addresses that they have on file to register for accounts that then slander teachers or other students, we can find out who they are from kind of a backward search. So I'd see if we have that capability. Assuming the student is located, I would have to initiate a full threat assessment process. I think that's only fair since it was a threatening comment or could be taken as such. If that's the case, then I would suspend the student while the case was being investigated. I would contact the police or the student resource officer. And then, of course, upon investigation, we'd have a re-entry meeting. I might bring up to the student and the parents of the Megan Myers Cyberbullying Prevention Act, which basically says that people who are bullied online can file criminal lawsuits against offending parties to prevent this from happening. And so to kind of show how serious the threat is and how serious we take it, I might talk about some legal cases that have to do with that specifically. I would probably move the student to a new teacher. When this happened to me, and I put this in my reflection for this module, when a student threatened me, I felt safer when the student was moved to a different classroom. In fact, he wasn't even allowed in my hallway. And so I might feel safe. I might, as a teacher, feel safe if the student was no longer allowed contact with me, or at least was put with a different teacher. That alone would make me feel just way better. And then I think this case opens up a nice way to continue restorative practices with Miss Tate about how to build relationships in her classroom. She needs more mentorship. She needs professional development. She needs targeted feedback on her evaluations about this issue and goal setting about how to keep a rigorous course load, but also not isolate students, not make them feel so panicky and stressed out where their only outlet is then to talk about you online. We've got to be able to balance the two, and I think some mentorship or some targeted feedback can help with these things. And assuming that Miss Tate is in a 3-year process, is getting tenure as it stands now, I would consider not renewing Miss Tate if she doesn't grow in certain areas with relationships and being able to balance the things that we've been trying to work on, but she's not showing growth, and that would just we'd have to consider not having her back because of that. So, if the student cannot be identified, I would probably send a letter to parents expressing concern. I would probably start tracking student emails to see if any more action occurs from those email addresses. And then I would probably have the principal conference with the class, bringing up, the legal ramifications if, we find you and this is what happens, like this is what action Miss Tate can take. So, let's knock it off, come forward, something like that. So I'd probably try to talk to the class as a whole too. Again, even if the student can't be identified, I would want to work on those practices with Miss Tate for building relationships. The rest of the case study that I'm going to present as far as steps and how I was valuing and acting will assume that the student could be identified. So, to resolve the issue, when the teacher feels supported and safe in the school, all students also feel supported and safe too. I think that's kind of a generic statement, but the teacher's attitude and her feelings in the classroom do resonate with the students. So when she feels safe, other students feel safe. I also feel like when the teacher is calm, collected, and confident and kind of presents that to the class, students are less likely to take advantage of a teacher. So if she comes back to class tail tucked and nervous, the kids are going to see through that and they're going to continue to take advantage of her, especially if the student can't be found. So again, we want to get Miss Tate back to class. We want to work on some of her classroom strategies. And again, we'll initiate that full threat assessment process with the student, which again involves suspending him, conducting an investigation with students, parents, witnesses, anybody else who might be helpful in gathering information. And then, of course, I need to keep the student's name anonymous. Even if the other students in the class know who's at fault for this, I want to keep his or her identity safe at all costs. So here's what I was thinking as I was kind of debriefing this problem and reflecting that, it's important that everyone knows their rights in the situation and what's at stake, both, disciplinary action-wise, legally, what's at stake. If, you're found to be harassing other members of the school. I want to think about the capability to find the student. I really, that kind of came to me immediately. I thought about how we could work to find the student at fault. I also thought about the credibility of the threat, like Mr. Smith expressed. It sounded like a prank, but of course we can't take that too lightly in this day and age, unfortunately. I would want to answer how widespread of an issue is this, how many students are involved. I was immediately thinking of kind of the broad scale. Is this limited to 1 or 2 students, or is this the whole class who is upset by her and participating in this Facebook page. I was thinking that Ms. Tate needs some classroom and personal support for this issue, both to resolve the issue in a classroom sense, but also personally since she feels so unsafe. I'm also thinking about the reputation of our school. We have a good reputation. I would like to think as an administrative team we have a good relationship, especially Dr. Smith, who is Principal of the Year. I need to maintain that at all costs and confirm that our school is a safe place to be for all stakeholders, parents, teachers, students, staff, all of it. I was thinking about all of those things as I was working through this. As far as feeling, I was feeling a little torn. I have to respect the student at fault and make sure that he or she has his or her rights protected, but I also have to support my staff member, Ms. Tate, who feels threatened. There's two sides to it. A little frustrated that Ms. Tate's professional development or ongoing work with Dr. Smith still resulted in this situation. She hasn't made a lot of changes to her classroom strategies, and that I think students found then this outlet to complain about Ms. Tate through this Facebook page, and so that's a little frustrating for me, especially since we've been working on it. I'm feeling concerned for the safety and well-being of that staff member, Ms. Tate. Don't want her to feel unsafe at school. And also, I'm feeling some questions about the seriousness of the threat. As far as valuing, I was valuing that students and staff deserve to feel safe at school, and that I value students and staff equally, and I value hearing all the perspectives before taking action. So I'd want to conduct a pretty extensive investigation before I start accusing students, disciplining students for being at fault. I value that threatening and harassing behavior inside the school will not be tolerated, and also FERPA, that the student's name and discipline record would be kept anonymous, assuming we found out who the student was. I want to protect that right as well. Open to further investigation. Again, we have to know if more than one student is involved and to what extent. What appropriate disciplinary action is there for the student, especially if it was determined to be a prank, but how do we go about disciplining him or her for that as well? What would the parent reaction be if we accuse a student of committing this threat? How will the parents respond? Need to think about that. And then how will Ms. Tate respond moving forward? Is she going to really make a change in her classroom strategies, or is this going to continue to be a problem and then we can't renew her because it starts to interfere with the school's culture? So this is for Standard 5. The education leader at the building level applies knowledge that promotes the success of every student by acting with integrity, fairness, and in an ethical manner. So how I acted as an educational leader with integrity, I want to respect the rights of the student who would be at fault and all students who might be accused of being at fault. I want to understand the teacher's concerns and not dismiss them. I want to take the threat seriously because she's taking it seriously. I think if I go at it thinking it's not a big deal, then that shows a lack of integrity from my part and a lack of support. And acting on behalf of all student safety. If we have a student who's making threats to teachers, I have to make sure that this student isn't also bullying other students, and the other students feel safe around the student's presence in class and elsewhere on school grounds. As far as acting with fairness, I want to give due process to each student who might be accused, so evaluating them on their involvement, giving Ms. Tate the benefit of the doubt, just being fair to her and listening to her, promising to investigate so that she feels safe returning to school, knowing that the administration is going to support her, and then again supporting her just in general and her return to the class by stepping in and helping her, being in class to make her feel safe or whatever it takes to get her back to class, help her want to change some of her practices, and then moving forward the best way we know how. And then ethically, I want to follow procedures for initiating threat assessments on a student and following through with that process until it's resolved. I want to look at the code of conduct for our school board about how to discipline the student. And then I would want to review the evaluation process with Ms. Tate and to ensure that she has some professional growth in classroom management or relationships areas so that this doesn't happen again. And then, of course, to act ethically is to know applicable laws. So tort laws, including defamation, injury, internet and cyberbullying laws. I mentioned the Megan Meyer Cyberbullying Prevention Act. Due process, giving everyone the benefit of the doubt until proven guilty. Obviously, FERPA, keeping people's names secure. Laws on harassment. And then, of course, good and just cause for dismissal of Ms. Tate, going through the process. And if there's a just cause for her dismissal, this would probably be it. But we want to go through that fully before acting. So these are all the ways that I would deal with this case study. Thank you so much for watching.